Hey man, say man, we back. Yeah, see me with my Trump shirt on. Today, man, something different, man. I ain't got no gossip today. I ain't saying nothing today. We gonna get into some shit I like to watch, some shit I like to see. Um, Now I'm big on like crime stories. I'm big on like um hustle shit. I'm big on like drug shit. I'm big on all that shit. I'm big on like I love that shit. Like that's what I fuck with. Like that's my vibe. You know what I'm saying? So, I ran across this one shit I was watching. I was watching this shit like the indictment when it came down. Um, I was watching it. I've been hip to this shit for a little minute. You know what I'm saying? So it's like me being hip to it. It's like I gotta watch it, check it out, see what's going on. Um, and if I watch it and see what's going on, I'm gonna share it with y'all. You know, I'm gonna share it with y'all. You feel me? And that's what we on though, bro. So most importantly, I've been on this bitch. She's a female. Um, she had 13 children, like in Cali, like they was in the hood. You feel me? And she was a real boss though, like a real shotter, a real shot caller. And I ain't gonna lie, she was dropping shit. She was putting in that work. We about to check her out. Just and see like so y'all can see like what she on and shit. Um, where I come from, it be females like this. You know what I'm saying? It be strong females that'll put the work in. You know what I'm saying? That'll get out there and get to it on the block. However, you feel me? So this ain't nothing new to me. I done seen females, strong females that handle business all the time. So it's like this ain't nothing new. Make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe if y'all in here. Comment for y'all chance to win the DJI Pocket 2 Creator Combo Series. Make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe for y'all chance to win this. Um, yeah, man. So I done seen like strong female that put it down. You feel me? So at the end of the day, she really surprised me with it though. You feel me? Like, cause she commanded 13 children. She had 13 boys. And shit, that's major. You a woman. You ruling 13 boys. We about to check her out though. We about to check her out. We about to get right into her story, and we about to just see what she was on, man. Because at the end of the day, bro, that's an accomplishment, bro. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't playing. She was really about her business from California. You know what I'm saying? It seemed like all the women from California be about their business. You know, and she was a hitter, bro. That's another thing that got me like, damn, she was a hitter. She was a hitter. Sup, you good, bro? Yeah, I'm good, bro. I'm good, bro. I'm good. We about to get into this girl's story and shit, man. I was watching her shit before, man. And then you know how this shit be. My daughter be on my shit, so I done lost it. You know what I'm saying? So I lost it. I lost her like the story. I had lost it, but I had just found it again. So now I'm about to jump. We about to jump into this and see what she on. You know what I'm saying? She was a real reputable that way. So we about to jump right into this.
February 2008, police responded to reports of a shooting near an elementary school and found 36-year-old Marco Salas lying on the ground. He had been walking hand in hand with his 2-year-old granddaughter when a car passed and opened fire. The bullets missed the child. Salas was hit over and over, collapsing there in front of the school. Minutes later, officers spotted a car carrying known members of the Avenues gang. The driver didn't stop. The car pushed forward, cut through traffic, and turned onto Drew Street. Officers followed.
Drew Street, that's a street in Cali.
Suspects had already stepped out. Gunfire broke out almost immediately, multiple weapons going off in quick succession. When it ended, one of them was down, Daniel Clever Leon, Maria's son, lying in the street with a rifle beside him.
Real hitter.
By the time the shooting happened, the system behind it had already...
That guy's a real hitter.
It was running out of a single house on Drew Street. Inside 3304 Drew Street, children slept. Some as young as 3 months old, a crib pressed against the wall of a back bedroom, while in the next rooms over, men counted money, weighed narcotics, and answered phones that didn't stop ringing. Each call just another order feeding what law enforcement would later describe as one of the most brazen drug marketplaces in the history of the LAPD's Northeast Division. Steel bars covered the windows, cameras lined the eaves and fed into a monitor in the living room where someone kept watch, always scanning, while motion sensors stretched across the yard, set to alert the house the second anyone crossed into the wrong space. And on a shelf nearby, a shrine to Jesus Malverde burned in candlelight, rosaries draped over it, his painted face looking out over the guns, the product and the money like a blessing that made sense inside that house, even if it wouldn't anywhere else. The house had a nickname. People in the neighborhood called it the Satellite House because of the enormous black dish that sat in the driveway for years, something you could spot from halfway down the block, as familiar as any church steeple. But to the people inside it, the ones who worked there and built their lives around it, the house felt like something.
Hey, these is actual photos. These is actual photos, actual pictures of the people that they talking about. So all this shit is like, you know what I'm saying? This is actual pictures, actual photos. We watching MARÍA Leon, MARÍA CHATA Leon. She's an OG in Cali, you know what I'm saying? She had 13 children. She was like the queen pin of Drew Street. She was doing her thing, you know what I'm saying? And so everything you gonna see is real, you know what I'm saying? These real pictures, real investigation videos that they got, real pictures from the crime scenes. Everything is real on here. And it's breaking down the story of how she came up to and became powerful with all her children, with all 9 of her children, all 9 of her boys. So it's telling us how she became powerful in Cali with these boys off of Drew Street. You know what I'm saying? She's a real OG. She's holding shit down. Check this out.
Else entirely, more like a command center, a fortress, the fixed point. Everything on Drew Street seemed to move around. This wasn't some corner boy operation. What was happening on Drew Street followed a system, tightly organized and controlled, with everything moving the way it was meant to. At the center of it all, the drugs, the guns, the surveillance, the lookouts on the roofs, the runners on the sidewalk, the money moving in and out like a tide, was a mother, an immigrant from a small town in the mountains of Guerrero, Mexico, who came to Los Angeles with nothing and built something that would eventually take more than 500 law enforcement officers and 2 separate federal RICO indictments to bring down. The street itself made control easy. Drew Street is a short dead end, mostly entered from one direction, with a hillside layout that narrows everything into a natural choke point. From lookout spots set before the cul-de-sac, they could see every car coming in.
Listen, it's called connecting, and it's insane.
Oh, these boys was real militant too, I see.
And it works.
Giving them 30
was real militant
seconds to adjust, move product, clear the curb, and let the block settle back into something that looked ordinary before a patrol unit reached the end. At night, tires squealed and gunshots echoed, and neighbors learned to pull their curtains and stay inside. In some years, this single street accounted for a disproportionate share of violent crime across the LAPD's Northeast Division, which spans roughly 30 square miles. All of it concentrated into 2 blocks, a hillside street where, during the day, children still walked to school, still played in the yards, still tried to live something close to a normal life, in the hours between when the business was running at full capacity. Officers from the Northeast Division tried everything.
Hey, I'm gonna keep pausing it throughout the video, but one thing for sure, two things for certain, they is not lying, bro, about how how the shit just blend in. They is not lying. If y'all take a look at my video on here on my channel, I live stream. I went to Cali and live stream on Figaro. So me live streaming on Figaro Street, bro, I swear to God, bro, you had regular people there walking on Figaro Street trying to get to their destination. You had people working on Figaro Street, working there, doing their thing. And then you had the hookers there doing their thing. You had the girls there selling the yang yang. You know what I'm saying? And then you had regular, you know what I'm saying, dealers there doing their thing. And you had regular, you know what I'm saying, street hustlers there doing their thing. But you would look at it and it'd be like it's meshed all in. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm there live streaming, but you got girls on this side selling the yin yang, and you got school kids coming out from school walking, and you seeing all this shit. This shit all meshing together. People selling shit, everything. And I'm like, dang, these females out here naked in the mud, bro. And the kids walking from school. Shit was just crazy. It was a sight. It was a sight to see, bro. So they ain't lying about how all this shit could mesh together. You would never know. You would never see it.
They formed special task forces and eventually shut them down when nothing stuck. They ran undercover drug buys over and over, making arrests the operation absorbed without slowing down. They cut the trees back almost to their crowns just to see further into the block. Graffiti crews came every day, but the tags returned within hours. The same markings reclaiming the walls, like the argument never.
You gotta have a good eye for that.
Shootouts shattered them. They even encased the streetlights in protective housings. For a while, each effort seemed to make a dent, but it never held. Because the operation on Drew Street wasn't simply the product of gang activity. It was the product of a family. And dismantling a family requires something fundamentally different from shutting down a drug corner. One of Maria's sons, Daniel Leon, known on the street as Cleaver, often walked the block in broad daylight with an assault rifle in plain view, carrying himself with a kind of authority that made people cross the street rather than pass him. Mothers walking their children to school picked up their pace when he appeared, and kids learned early to keep their heads forward, the way you pick up certain instincts when you grow up where danger is always there. Inside the house, camera feeds flickered across a monitor in the living room, where Maria or her sons watched for
these are real pictures.
When something felt off, signals moved quickly between lookouts and runners.
Just the actual house.
A coded phrase, and within seconds the block shifted. Runners disappeared into houses or slipped through backyards onto nearby streets. And just as quickly, everything settled back into the look of an ordinary neighborhood. From the outside, it would have been easy to assume that an operation this organized was directed by a patriarch, a male shot caller with prison
that's the actual house right there.
Violent reputation. In reality, the web of
actual street
distribution, extortion, and intimidation that defined Drew Street coalesced around Maria Chata Leon.
That's her.
Barely 5 feet tall and slightly over 100 pounds by most accounts, she commanded loyalty and fear in a neighborhood and a criminal subculture that had never produced anyone quite like her. Her journey from an impoverished, undocumented immigrant to the matriarch of the Drew Street clique is one of the most extraordinary and least told true crime stories in the history of Los Angeles. This is that story, but to understand what she built, you have to understand where she came from. The specific place, the specific conditions, the specific narrowness of the world she was born into, and the choices it offered her. How does a mother build something this powerful? You have to start at the beginning. The mother who built a gang. To understand Maria Leon, you have to understand Tlalchapa, not just as a dot on a map, a municipality in the Tierra Caliente region of Guerrero in southwestern Mexico, but as a condition. The Tierra Caliente, which translates to the hot land, is a stretch of interior geography straddling parts of Guerrero, Michoacan, Mexico State, known for scorching summer temperatures.
That's how I look down there too, though.
And a history of violence that runs deep into the land itself. The region has historically produced some of Mexico's most dangerous criminal organizations, desperate immigrants, sometimes, as journalist Sam Quinones observed in his reporting on Drew Street, from the same families. Tlalchapa was a small agricultural community, the kind of place where the economy rests on subsistence farming and whatever money flows in from relatives who made it north. No industrial base.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 40.
No real professional infrastructure. The way out for generations of families was the United States border. Families from CHATA and the surrounding Tierra Caliente municipalities made that crossing and, over time, gravitated toward a specific corner of Los Angeles, the hillside enclave of Glassell Park in the East Division, where relatively affordable rents and an existing community of fellow Guerrero immigrants made the transition bearable. Quinones documented how this pattern of chain migration created in Glassell Park a neighborhood within a neighborhood, a community where the social fabric of Tlaxcala was partially reconstructed on the hillsides of Los Angeles, down to the extended family networks, the unspoken codes, and the deep wariness of outsiders that develops in communities living outside the reach of official legal protection. Maria Leon arrived in Glassell Park in the mid-1980s, likely in her late teens or early 20s. She was one of thousands making the same journey, one more young woman from Guerrero navigating a city that didn't particularly notice she had arrived. In the beginning, she did what many around her did. She worked, she babysat children in the neighborhood, she cleaned houses, she reportedly sold paletas from a cart, the same kind of street vending she might have done back home. She later told probation officers that she had also sold gold jewelry door to door and had at certain points received public assistance. By every visible measure, she was unremarkable. A young, undocumented woman navigating the precarious informal economy.
Oh, it get better, bro.
Margins of Los Angeles. But the neighborhood she had arrived in was not a neutral space, and Maria Leon was not someone.
Hey, this shit get better. This shit about to get deep right now. It's like it's setting it up, but this shit about to get deep. It's about to get crazy. Make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. If y'all like this type of shit, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be doing some more of these on some people I know fuck with. You know what I'm saying? So make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned. Story about to get deep.
Someone who stayed passive in the face of her circumstances for long. The Avenues gang had been a presence in Northeast Los Angeles since at least the 1950s, emerging from the Mexican-American communities of Highland Park, Glassell Park, and Cypress Park. Like many of the street gangs that took root in mid-century Los Angeles, the Avenues formed in part as a response
That's
to
the boys right there.
disinvestment that followed urban renewal and infrastructure projects that cut through or eliminated established neighborhoods. The Chavez Ravine clearance, which ultimately resulted in Dodger Stadium being built on land where a Mexican-American community had lived for generations, and the construction of freeways that bisected Northeast LA neighborhoods contributed to a landscape in which many young Mexican-American men had lost community anchors and institutional support. The Avenues emerged in that context, young men asserting identity and forming protective bonds in neighborhoods that felt increasingly precarious. By the time Maria arrived in the mid-1980s, the Avenues had been established for 3 decades. They were not a casual youth clique. They were an institution with defined turf, a layered internal hierarchy, and relationships to larger criminal structures. Most critically, to the Mexican mafia, known as La M. La M is a prison-based gang that by the 1980s had consolidated its influence over dozens of Southern California street gangs. The arrangement was systematic. Southern California street gangs, including the Avenues, were expected to operate their drug markets under La M's authorization and to pay a portion of their revenue, a tax, to Mexican mafia shot callers issuing directives from inside federal penitentiaries. Gangs that failed to comply faced the possibility of bank sanctions removal. This structure created a form of organized crime governance.
Look how she come through.
Activity across Los Angeles.
Look how she come through.
Decentralized enough
she
to
come through and
the
put the
arrest
plate
of individual
down.
Leaders, but coordinated enough to extract revenue from a vast network of local operations. It was into this world that Maria Leon's criminal career took shape. Her first documented arrest came in 1985 for assault with a deadly weapon. Then 1986, theft and burglary. Then 1992, possession of PCP and marijuana for sale. Between 1992 and 1997, she accumulated multiple arrests for drug felonies and extortion. Each encounter with the justice system produced modest consequences, short jail terms.
Her first ever arrest was y'all just heard, an assault with a deadly weapon. She putting that work in. She wasn't playing. Then she went from assault to, hey, I'm on the block with it and I'm pressing shit. PCE and the other shit. She wasn't playing, man. She not playing. She putting in work. She had 13 children and she showed all 13 of them boys how to put that work in. And she putting that work in. Yo, listen, pay attention to her. She a real G for sure because she put the work in before she even jumped off the porch. She was hustling. She was she was sliding. She was putting that work in over there.
Probation deportation orders. She was deported to Mexico at least twice and returned both times, using smuggling networks to re-enter the United States.
Man.
By the time she was taken into federal custody in 2008, her documented arrest history stretched back more than 2 decades, accumulating into a portrait not of bad luck, but of persistent, deliberate criminal enterprise, and of a system that kept treating each arrest as an isolated incident rather than a pattern. The transition from small-time seller to the operational center of the Drew.
Everybody wants these, but nobody wants to do these, and everybody wants these.
Drew Street clique was gradual, driven by a combination of economic desperation,
she was a cockroach,
personal ambition, and structural opportunity. When you are an undocumented woman with a growing number of children and no legitimate path to financial stability, and your neighborhood is organized around an illegal economy that generates more in a day than domestic work produces in a month, the logic of participation is not difficult to follow. But what separated Maria Leon from others who might have made the same calculation was what she did once she made it. She didn't stop at survival. She built. She began the way most people in that world begin, selling small quantities out of the house to people she knew, then to people they knew. The crack cocaine epidemic of the late 1980s and early 1990s had reshaped the economics of street-level drug sales across American cities, and Los Angeles was among the most severely affected. Crack was cheap to manufacture, generated enormous demand, and moved quickly at the retail level. For a woman with a house, a roster of family members who could serve as lookouts and runners, and a dead-end street with limited police visibility, the logistical infrastructure for a sustained drug operation was already in place. She just had to be willing to use it. One of the central relationships in Maria's rise was with Francisco Pancho Real, the father of at least 2 of her children, and one of the more respected figures in the Drew Street clique. Their partnership, as Pancho himself would later describe it to federal investigators, divided along clear functional lines. He handled the outward-facing criminal activity, extortion, territorial enforcement, distribution management, while Maria controlled the house, the product flow, and the family. He told prosecutors that she had been selling drugs since the late 1980s, that she had grown the operation alongside the gang's own expansion, and that she was fully capable of running it without his presence, and did. This testimony, delivered in exchange for a reduced federal sentence, was among the most damaging evidence presented against her at trial. By the late 1990s, the satellite house was running with a discipline that was difficult to square with the image of an immigrant woman simply trying to get by. The operation had a clear division of labor, organized along family lines. Older sons packaged narcotics, crack cocaine and methamphetamine, into small units, weighed and inventoried with the kind of precision that any legitimate distribution operation would recognize. Runners, often younger family members or the girlfriends of gang members, delivered product to customers at the curb or at designated nearby drop points, using disposable phones that could be discarded at the first sign of a problem. The phones rang constantly. Pancho Real told federal investigators that at its peak, the operation was generating approximately $1,200 per day in drug revenue. A portion funded household expenses. Another portion flowed upward to Mexican mafia leadership as tribute. The remainder was reinvested. More product, more weapons, upgraded surveillance equipment. Daniel Leon, clever, was the most visible embodiment of the security structure. He was young, barely out of his teens, when he became the clique's most feared enforcer, and he had grown up inside the satellite house, shaped by everything it represented. According to reports that circulated at the time, Danny had undergone LASIK surgery to correct poor vision, and the detail, whether entirely accurate or partially exaggerated by the time it reached the street, said something true about how he operated, with calculated deliberateness, as someone who took the work seriously. He carried his rifle openly because openness was its own deterrent. You don't need to fire a weapon if people believe unconditionally that you will. Jose Leon, the eldest son, functioned as a lieutenant, supervising operations, managing communication between the house and the street, making decisions in crisis situations that were designed to protect the family's interests above all else. Nicolas Real, born from Maria's relationship with a different partner, was identified by law enforcement as another shot caller within the clique, managing distribution alongside Pancho and serving as an intermediary between the house's operations and the street-level members. His name appeared in civil nuisance abatement proceedings as one of the individuals specifically barred from the property, indicating that law enforcement had flagged him as central to the operation well before federal charges were filed. Randy and Jesus Martinez, younger brothers, occupied the tier below, foot soldiers being absorbed into the operation through constant exposure, learning by watching, by participating, by coming to understand that this was simply the shape of life in the house they had grown up in. The daughters occupy a quieter corner of the public record, less documented in court filings and press coverage, but no less present in the operation. Some allegedly served as lookouts, their gender providing a degree of cover that a young man standing on the same corner for 2 hours would not have had. Others reportedly handled financial logistics, managing the flow of money and coordinating with suppliers. In a system this tightly organized, every position carries a function. Every person inside it is, to some degree, implicated. Inside the house, the Malverde shrine burns steadily. Jesus Malverde is a folkloric figure from Sinaloa, a bandit from the early 20th century, possibly apocryphal, who became a patron saint figure among narco traffickers in Mexico and eventually among drug dealers in the United States. Whether Maria's devotion was genuine religious faith, superstition, or a deliberate performance of shared cultural identity that reinforced the loyalty of those around her is impossible to determine from the outside. What mattered was its function. It framed the operation as something ordained, something larger than the sum of its criminal parts. The family wasn't simply a gang. In the logic cultivated inside those walls, they were a chosen unit, protected by something the law couldn't reach. The neighborhood knew. It had always known. Eusterbio Renteria, who had lived on Drew Street since 1972 and watched 2 of his own sons absorbed by the gang over the years, watched the operation grow year by year from his front porch. He said nothing publicly for a long time, not because he was indifferent, but because silence was rational. This was the ecosystem Maria had built, one where speaking to police meant risking everything you had left, and where keeping quiet at least preserved the illusion of safety. Some residents, it should be said, existed in a transactional relationship with the operation. The gang provided a form of informal protection from outside criminal elements, the same way protection economies always produce beneficiaries alongside victims. But for most people on that block, the experience was simply one of enduring something that could not be fought and could not be escaped. Teachers at Fletcher Drive Elementary School, a few blocks from Drew Street, described students arriving exhausted, not the ordinary tiredness of childhood, but the bone-deep fatigue of people whose sleep had been interrupted night after night by gunshots and police helicopters circling overhead. The school's principal described a pervasive background anxiety in the student body that never fully lifted. These were children normalizing something that should never have been normalized, and paying for that normalization in their concentration, their rest, their sense of safety in spaces designed to protect them. Residents developed a set of unspoken survival protocols. Don't look directly at the men on the corner. Don't linger near the house when traffic is moving. Don't answer strangers' questions. And above all, don't answer questions from police. Not out of loyalty to the gang, but because loyalty to the gang was the only thing standing between you and a brick through your window, or your own son being pulled into something he couldn't walk away from. The Drew Street clique's rivalries sharpened the violence and made it unpredictable. Their primary adversaries in Northeast Los Angeles included gangs from the Cypress Park and Frogtown areas. Territory disputes produced regular shootings along contested borders. The clique also operated within the broader Avenues network, meaning that conflicts in other parts of Northeast LA could ripple back to Drew Street, an incident in Highland Park producing a retaliatory shooting in Glassell Park. Violence that appeared geographically scattered, but was organizationally connected. And connecting it all was the Mexican mafia, its shot callers in federal prisons issuing instructions that filtered down through multiple layers before reaching the street, tying a small cul-de-sac in Glassell Park to the largest prison-based criminal organization in Southern California. The Avenue's violence was not limited to narcotics disputes. Federal civil rights prosecutions in 2006 and 2007 revealed that members of the Avenues had conducted a sustained campaign of racially motivated harassment and violence against Black residents in the Highland Park area. a pattern that prosecutors described as an organized effort to drive African American residents from Avenue's claimed territory.
This woman in Kansas City searched her name and found $6.1 million in unclaimed money. Like, what?
Wait, you don't know about unclaimed money? This is something everybody should know about. The government may owe you money, and you can go and search your name on binverified.com.
Go on.
Okay, let's say you have money left over from an old job, a closed bank account, tax refund, pensions, inheritance, security deposit. Each year, millions of dollars like this go unclaimed.
Wow, you need to tell me how I could check if there's anything for me.
Just go to binverified.com.
It's always free this, give away that. It ends today. The free spins gotta go.
But people love the daily free spin.
They're a casino, not a charity.
Sorry, Fran. The free daily spin isn't going anywhere.
Gang members, including Gilbert Saldana, Alejandro Martinez, and Fernando Cazares, were convicted in connection with a conspiracy that included the murders of Kenneth Wilson and Christopher Bowser. A separate prosecution resulted in life sentences for Porfirio Avila and co-defendants. These were among the first federal hate crime convictions ever obtained against a street gang, and they illustrated something important about what the Avenues had become. Not simply a criminal enterprise protecting its economic interests, but an organization enacting a violent ideological project about who was permitted to exist in which neighborhoods. The Drew Street clique was the revenue engine and one of the enforcement arms of this broader structure. And at the center of the Drew Street clique was the Satellite House, and at its center, a woman who by the mid-2000s had built something that the vast majority of male gang leaders in Los Angeles never achieved: a fully integrated, family-based criminal operation running with the organizational coherence of a small cartel in a subculture that had never considered a woman capable of building it. Street gangs in Los Angeles have been, without exception, patriarchally organized. Leadership defaults to men. Women in gang structures occupy supplementary roles. They carry messages, provide safe houses, sustain relationships with incarcerated members, but they do not typically command, do not typically direct the men around them, and are rarely the people that Mexican mafia shot callers conduct business with as equals. Research on female gang participation consistently places women at the margins of gang organizations, not their centers. What Maria Leon did was genuinely outside the template, wielding authority that men with far longer violent resumes respected, leveraging her role as mother and household anchor as an organizational tool, using the one resource the gang world consistently undervalues: blood loyalty, which in her case meant 13 people who were bound to her before they understood what they were being bound to. She did not rise through the organization the way a man would have, through accumulated violence, through fear, through the slow acquisition of credibility that comes from bodies and prison time. She rose by being irreplaceable, by providing what no one else could: a fixed, trusted center, a house that never moved, a network of people whose loyalty was guaranteed, not by fear alone, but by the deepest social obligation that exists. She was their mother, and in a world where trust is the scarcest resource of all, she had 13 people obligated to trust her before they had a choice in the matter. Then came the day when everything started to crack. It didn't happen all at once. That's never how these things go. The end of something this embedded, this insulated by silence, fear, organizational redundancy, and a family structure that kept regenerating itself every time the law removed a member, doesn't arrive in a single decisive moment. It fractures first, along lines of stress that have been accumulating for years, pressure building in the structure until something gives, and then something else, and then suddenly everything is coming apart faster than anyone inside it can stop. The first serious fracture came on Halloween night, 2002. Police executed a search warrant on the property at 3304 Drew Street and found exactly what you'd expect inside a fortified drug operation that had been running for over a decade: a Tech-9 machine pistol, cocaine and marijuana, ammunition, a small explosive device, a cell phone ringing, actively ringing while officers stood in the living room, with customers placing drug orders as if the raid were simply a scheduling interruption. And in the back rooms of that same house, 6 children under 10 years old living within the operation, including 1 infant, 3 months old, sleeping in a crib while the enterprise continued around him. The Malverde shrine burned in one room, the candle still lit. The charges that followed were significant. Jose Leon pleaded guilty to drug possession for sale and received 4 years. Maria herself pleaded guilty to child endangerment and possession of an assault weapon, receiving a 6-year sentence. but with credit for time served and a subsequent transfer to immigration authorities. Her actual time incarcerated was considerably shorter than the number suggests. She was deported to Mexico. Within roughly a year, she was back in Los Angeles. The operation resumed as if the raid had been a minor scheduling disruption rather than a criminal conviction. This is the part of the story that reveals something important about the limits of conventional law enforcement responses to a family-based criminal network. Arresting individual members doesn't dismantle the organization. It creates temporary vacancies. When Maria was deported, her sons filled the space she left. When Jose went to prison, Nicolai and Danny absorbed his responsibilities. The clique was redundant by design because the family was the design, and the family didn't go away simply because some of its members were temporarily removed. In 2005, the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office tried a different instrument. Using civil law rather than criminal prosecution, they moved to have the satellite house declared a public nuisance, a designation that would allow the court to bar specific individuals from the property and potentially enable its eventual seizure. The resulting injunction prohibited 54 people, including Maria and several of her children, from being present at or near the premises. The family relocated temporarily to Victorville, a high desert city roughly 2 hours northeast of Los Angeles, and by some external appearances, the Drew Street operation quieted. Law enforcement sources, however, reported that Maria was continuing to direct operations remotely, using phones and family intermediaries to maintain oversight from a distance. When the family eventually returned, having satisfied the legal requirements to reoccupy the property, it was as if the injunction had been not a disruption, but an inconvenience, a compliance formality that the operation absorbed and moved past.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
The Stop Price Gouging in Grocery Stores Act.
The message out here putting people over profits.
Corporate grocery stores are jacking up prices using technology, so we're fighting back to ensure that corporate greed doesn't stop people from getting the food they need.
Whoa, he got all of that one. That's gone.
Thank you. Your home for home runs. New customers bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if you win.
Then February 21st, 2008 arrived, and with it a set of events that even the most adaptive family operation could not simply absorb. That morning, Danny Leon, Cleaver, along with his cousin Jose Gomez and Randy Martinez, were allegedly involved in the murder of Marcos Salas. Salas, according to investigators, had refused to pay drug taxes to the Drew Street clique. In the logic that governed the clique's extortion operation, this kind of refusal was not simply a financial loss. It was a challenge to the authority structure that the clique had spent years enforcing. If one person refused and faced no consequences, others would follow. The calculation was brutal and consistent. Non-compliance had to produce a visible final outcome. Salas was shot dead outside an elementary school in the Cypress Park neighborhood, roughly a mile from Drew Street. His body was left in the parking lot where parents would drop off their children in a few hours. Police responded quickly. When officers located the suspect's vehicle on Drew Street, Danny Leon did not surrender. He retreated into the satellite house, retrieved his assault rifle, and opened fire on undercover LAPD officers from the front of the property. The gun battle that followed was brief. Danny was shot and killed. His cousin Jose Gomez was wounded and arrested. 2 other men were taken into custody and charged in connection with the Salas murder. Danny Leon was 22 years old. He had grown up inside the satellite house, been shaped by everything it was and everything it demanded, and died defending it with the weapon he had been carrying for years. To law enforcement and the broader community, his death could have looked like an ending. The removal of the clique's most dangerous member, proof that the Avenue's grip on Drew Street could be broken. To the people who had grown up with him, to the surviving sons and nephews and associates who had spent their entire lives inside this world, it was something else. It was a martyrdom. And in the moral logic of the street, a martyrdom demands a response. That response came 6 months later, on August 2nd, 2008, Deputy Juan Abel Escalante was an off-duty Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy, a father, a Cypress Park resident who lived in the same communities he served professionally. By all accounts, he was the kind of officer who stayed embedded in his neighborhood, the kind whose presence in a community was about more than a uniform and a shift. He was shot and killed outside his home in what investigators almost immediately recognized as an intentional act of retaliation. Wiretaps that law enforcement had been running since the February gun battle captured what investigators needed. In a recorded conversation, Carlos Stoney Velasquez, Maria Leon's nephew, told Jose Leon that he had killed Escalante to avenge Danny's death. Jose's response, according to court documents, was to promise Stoney financial support and to assure him that his interests would be protected inside prison. The conversation was damning, specific, and exactly the kind of evidence federal prosecutors needed to convert a local gang investigation into a federal racketeering case. The murder of a law enforcement officer changed the institutional calculus entirely. It is a grim but well-documented truth about American policing that the deaths of civilians, even sustained or repeated civilian deaths in a community like Glassell Park, even 2 decades of funerals and terrorized school children and a neighborhood living in ambient fear, rarely unlock the kind of resources and political urgency that the death of an officer produces. The people of Drew Street have been living with this violence since before some of the younger gang members were born. The LAPD had mounted task forces. The city attorney had filed civil nuisance suits. Officers had trimmed the trees and encased the streetlights and come every day to paint over the graffiti. None of it had permanently changed the fundamental situation. Deputy Escalante's murder changed the level of the response. A federal racketeering case, coordinated across multiple agencies, was now the instrument. On June 24, 2008, the United States Department of Justice unsealed a federal indictment charging 70 members and associates of the Drew Street clique with a sweeping array of crimes: racketeering, murder, attempted murder of law enforcement officers, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, firearms violations, home invasion robbery, and extortion. The indictment alleged that the clique had controlled life on and around Drew Street through sustained violence and the threat of violence, that it had collected taxes from independent drug dealers in its territory, forwarding portions to Mexican mafia leadership in federal prisons, that it had committed murders and directed attacks on rivals, witnesses, and police. This was not a narcotics bust targeting street-level dealers. This was a structural prosecution, deploying the RICO statute, the same legal instrument originally designed to dismantle Italian-American organized crime in the 1970s, to treat the Drew Street clique as precisely what it was: a criminal enterprise with a defined hierarchy, a revenue structure, and a sustained pattern of organized criminal activity. The following morning at 4 a.m., more than 500 law enforcement officers executed 25 simultaneous search warrants across Glassell Park and surrounding neighborhoods. LAPD officers, federal agents, county deputies, 28 people were arrested that morning. 26 more were already in custody from prior arrests. 16 remained at large. Officers seized 28 firearms. Inside the satellite house, raided again, they found hidden compartments, surveillance equipment, and financial records, ledgers, distribution lists, documentation of tax collection, and upward payments to La M, along with cell phone footage of Danny Leon brandishing his rifle in the days before the February shootout. Prosecutors were not simply arresting people, they were documenting an organization. In April 2008, months before the RICO indictment was unsealed, Maria Leon had already been taken into federal custody. Agents arrested her outside her former home on Drew Street on a charge of illegal re-entry, a federal felony that carries a maximum sentence of 20 years, and that her long pattern of deportation and return had finally made prosecutable in a way that would hold her in custody. The re-entry charge was the opening move. By the time the racketeering indictment was complete, she was named as a central defendant, charged with racketeering conspiracy and conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine. She was in her mid-40s, and the network she had built was coming apart at every joint. The person most directly responsible for that unraveling was one of her own sons, Francisco.
Smart founders know something most people miss. Get your domain name even if you're not ready to launch your business. With Wix, you can grab yours now and then get to work. Here's why it matters. Back in 2019, I had this killer business idea, but I delayed getting the domain name because I wasn't ready. That was a huge mistake. Someone else grabbed it, built the exact same business I planned, and now they're making all the money that I could have been making. And that's why I'm sharing this. Locking down your domain name is crucial, and on Wix, it's super fast. They handle all the tricky tech stuff for you, making it seamless. And honestly, having a domain name gives your idea instant credibility. A domain name isn't just a name, it's a way to claim your space and take your idea seriously. Because once it's taken, you're stuck paying a premier price for it or losing it. So go to Wix right now, search your idea. If the domain is available, grab it.
Find exceptional deals on Lazy Boy Comfort, quality power reclining sofas from FlexSteel. The Drew and Jonathan collection, flexible, comfortable, and built to last. And many more of the top-rated furniture brands, including the latest new arrivals. smart financing, and free same-day delivery make this the perfect season for a fresh start at home. Gardner White's Spring Savings Event, now through April 29th.
Pancho Real, facing a federal racketeering charge that would almost certainly mean decades in prison, made the decision that the rest of the family would never forgive. He cooperated with the government. He sat across from federal prosecutors and gave them the architecture of the operation, the structure of the clique, his mother's role at the center, the logistics of the tax system, the relationships with Mexican mafia leadership, the locations of hidden compartments, the identities of individuals connected to specific crimes. He described in detail what he had helped build, piece by piece, for years. In exchange, he received a substantially reduced sentence and was eventually placed in a witness protection, separated from his family, his neighborhood, the entire world that had formed him, relocated to somewhere the geography of which cannot be made public. Among the people he'd grown up with, his name became something close to profanity. A second major federal action followed in September 2009. A new indictment charged 88 members of the Avenues with federal racketeering in a case that alleged the Mexican mafia was actively attempting to reorganize the gang in the aftermath of the Drew Street takedown. Approximately 1,300 law enforcement officers executed the raids connected to this action, arresting 45 more individuals and seizing 33 additional firearms. The charging document ran to 222 pages and described in granular detail the mechanics of La M's communications from inside federal penitentiaries, through prison visitors, through coded correspondence, through the occasional attorney, and how street-level cliques like Drew Street had funneled tribute money upward through the structure. It was a picture of organized crime that extended far beyond a single house on a single dead-end street in Glassell Park, connecting that house to a statewide criminal infrastructure. Carlos Stoney Velasquez was eventually captured and, like Pancho Real before him, ultimately cooperated with prosecutors. He was convicted of Deputy Escalante's murder, received a life sentence, and became eligible for parole consideration through his cooperation. The recorded wiretap conversation in which he admitted the killing was among the most significant pieces of evidence produced by the entire investigation. One by one, the family came apart in federal court. Randy and Jesus Martinez, charged in connection with the murder of Marco Salas, were convicted and sentenced to lengthy federal terms. Jose Leon and Nicolas Real faced substantial sentences for racketeering and drug distribution. Danny was dead. Pancho was in witness protection. The daughters and extended family members were variously charged, investigated, or left to reconstruct whatever lives remained possible after the dismantling of the only world they had ever known. The Leon family, which had operated as a self-reinforcing, redundant, blood-loyal structure for 20 years, was dismantled almost entirely. MARÍA Leon entered a guilty plea to racketeering conspiracy and conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine. A federal judge sentenced her to 100 months, 8 years and 4 months. She appealed the sentence, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed it in 2011. Upon completion of her federal term, she was to be deported. During her incarceration, she reportedly attempted to arrange travel back to the United States through a smuggling network to attend the funeral of her son, Danny, the same method she had used for previous re-entries. The attempt was discovered by law enforcement. She remained in custody. After serving her sentence, she was deported to Mexico. Her current whereabouts are not publicly known. On February 5th, 2009, an excavator arrived on Drew Street and began tearing the satellite house down. It took approximately 30 minutes to reduce the structure to a debris field. Los Angeles City Attorney Rocky Delgadillo, whose office had pursued the civil nuisance action against the property years earlier, stood nearby and called the demolition a symbol of the neighborhood's reclamation of itself. LAPD officers who had spent years working that street watched the building come down. One officer, Steve Aguilar, who had patrolled Drew Street through some of its worst years, stood near the perimeter and said 2 words: "It feels good." Eusterbio Renteria, who had lived on Drew Street since 1972 and watched 2 of his sons absorbed by the gang over the decades, also watched. He said they should have done it 10 years earlier. The cleared lot became a community garden. Residents who had lived in fear for the better part of 20 years began tending it. Children from Fletcher Drive Elementary School, the same school whose students had come to class exhausted from sleepless nights, played in a space where fear had been the only thing reliably produced for as long as any of them could remember. In the years that followed the demolition, and the federal prosecutions, violent crime in the area declined significantly. Police reported drops in violent incidents from peak levels recorded earlier in the decade. The elementary school principal described her students as better rested. Residents who had refused for years to speak with police began providing information.
Aren't you tired of or this or that, soup or sandwich? Not here. Potbelly believes in the power of and. With Pick Your Pair, you get soup and sandwich, sandwich and salad, salad and soup. Potbelly puts the and in sandwich. I love this place.
Potbelly, we bring the hot.
Community cooperation that officers had not experienced on those streets in a generation started to emerge, slowly, tentatively, but genuinely. But not everything changed. The Avenues gang did not disappear. It contracted, reorganized, and adapted, as it had always adapted across more than half a century of law enforcement pressure. New cliques consolidated in other sections of Northeast Los Angeles. Mexican mafia leadership continued to operate from inside federal penitentiaries, exerting influence through the same channels it had always used, undisturbed by the removal of individual shot callers who were replaced as a matter of organizational routine. The economic conditions that had made Drew Street what it was, the poverty, the immigration precarity, the structural abandonment of communities that exist too far outside the mainstream for policy to consistently reach them, remained in place. The garden was real. The drop in violence was real. The transformation of that specific block was real. But the conditions that produced the satellite house had not been demolished along with it. What do you call it when a mother raises her children to go to war for her? When the crib sits against the wall while the guns are counted on the table in the next room. When the first coded signals a toddler learns are the warnings that mean police are coming. When the family meal is also a business meeting. When the house you grew up in is also a fortress. When the only childhood you've ever known is one in which loyalty to the family and loyalty to the operation are the same thing. And no one in your life has ever suggested they might be different. MARÍA CHATA Leon came to Los Angeles with nothing. That much is confirmed by the record. What she built from that nothing, the network, the system, the fortified compound, the machine that turned narcotics into revenue and revenue into power, and power into the kind of fear that silences a whole neighborhood for 2 decades, is also confirmed. What no court document fully captures is the cost, not to the city, not to the police department, not even primarily to Deputy Escalante's family, though that cost was real and enormous and deserves its own full accounting, the cost to her children. Daniel Leon died at 22 years old in a gun battle he started, with a weapon he had been carrying since adolescence, because he had grown up in a house where carrying a weapon was simply what the men around him did. Randy Martinez is serving decades in federal prison for a murder he was allegedly involved in before he was old enough to legally rent a car. Jose and Nicolas and Jesus, years of their lives swallowed by federal sentences for crimes that were not entirely separable from the circumstances of their upbringing. And Francisco Pancho Real is somewhere in witness protection, cut off from his family, his neighborhood, the community that formed him, in exchange for a reduced sentence and the anonymity of a relocated identity. The daughters moved through a space between complicity and victimhood that the public record has never fully mapped. Their stories mostly untold, their lives shaped by something none of them chose before they were old enough to understand what choosing meant. 13 children, 1 house, 2 decades of an operation so entrenched that it required hundreds of law enforcement officers across multiple agencies, 2 federal RICO indictments, civil nuisance litigation, sustained immigration enforcement, and the murder of a sheriff's deputy to bring it down. The satellite house is gone. A garden grows in its place. People tend it, living things that require patience and care, and the willingness to invest in something that returns slowly and cannot be hoarded. In every functional sense, the garden is the opposite of what stood there before. Where the house extracted from the neighborhood, the garden gives back. Where the house was sealed and fortified, the garden is open. Where the house operated on fear, the garden requires trust. But the children who grew up inside those walls, who slept in cribs next to the product, who learned to count money before they learned to read, who were handed roles in a criminal organization, before they were given any genuine choice about whether they wanted those roles. Those children carried Drew Street inside them wherever they are now, scattered across federal prisons far enough from Los Angeles that visiting is not a realistic possibility, somewhere in witness protection, at an address that will never be made public, in whatever lives the survivors are building from whatever remains after the collapse of the only world they knew. Power and family and survival, when you compress them together tightly enough, for long enough, across enough years and enough people, stop being separable things. They become one thing. And when that thing finally breaks, as it always breaks eventually, what's left is not simply the absence of a gang. It is the absence of a world. The only world that some of those 13 children ever had access to. The excavator took 30 minutes to knock down the house. It took 20 years to build what it became, and no federal prosecution, no civil injunction, no LAPD task force, no community garden has yet figured out how long it takes to undo what growing up inside something like that does to a child. What it costs to be born into a criminal enterprise before you are old enough to know that is what it is, and to carry that weight forward into whatever comes after. That math, unlike everything else on Drew Street, has never been simple.
How to find the right car for you. Go to Cars.com, read expert reviews. Find your off-road possibility on Cars.com.
Hardscapers, landscapers, tree experts, your bank may take weeks. Peak season's already here. Get funded fast.
They blew somebody's nails out right in front of me, Jeff. There's all kinds of shit.
Yeah, you gotta watch your son.
The San Francisco Bay Area is known for having a little bit of everything. People from different backgrounds, cultures, and wealth, who mostly all manage to coexist. In the late 1990s to the early 2000s, perhaps nowhere exemplified this more than the small city of Vallejo, which, thanks to local rappers like Mac Dre and E40, emerged at the forefront at the renaissance of debaucherousness revelry known as the hyphy movement. This newly popular culture based on fizz and partying hard and independence was able to bridge cultural gaps, but it also opened up new drug markets that local gangs and secret societies were well positioned to cash in on. For a group of young men in what was called the family-affiliated Irish Mafia, this era presented an opportunity for kids who'd grown up in the drug business to become drug lord millionaires as young adults. Known better by the acronym FAME, the gang had grown in the shadow of the Aryan Brotherhood, its members surrounded by Hell's Angels and other wild peckerwoods. But unlike the goose-stepping skinheads of Orange County and Long Beach, FAME somehow managed to straddle the seemingly incompatible worlds of Aryan prison gangs and hip-hop culture in the 707. More than that, FAME was founded on the concept of love and loyalty by childhood friends who in their teens sincerely believed they would stick together forever, managing to team up with Mexican drug cartels at an age where most young men are still discovering themselves. But just as quickly as the gang's prominence, wealth, and power rose, the gang would be challenged by not just law enforcement, but fractures from within. This is the story of two childhood friends who became blood enemies, culminating in betrayal, tragedy, and the taking of innocent life. This is The Killer Chronicles. It was just like any other night at my office bar and grill in the city of Vallejo, California. A cold sea breeze floated up from the Napa River, chilling the night air. But patrons inside were happy and festive. Folks drank beer, played pool, and lost track of time. A teen boy got bored with playing arcade games and pestered his dad if they could go soon. After this beer, his father replied. He tossed his son a couple quarters and went back to the drink. It was a moment he would come to regret for a long time. No one could have known that this gentle and carefree atmosphere would soon be pulverized in the worst way. For, standing outside the bar, were a spun-out mob hitman and a cartel-backed drug dealer who'd struck it rich. These figures weren't there by coincidence, but the man inside had no way of seeing it coming. And it was all because of a small city by the bay and a group of youngsters who'd come together decades earlier to form a mafia family. Let's take a step back and examine where it all began. It was the early 1990s in a place called Rodeo, California, on a short roadway between Garrettson Avenue, where a small group of young friends were looking for something to call themselves. There was Kobe Phillips, the son of a methamphetamine manufacturer named Donnie Phillips, two brothers, Jason and Matty Boy Donahue, whose father, Big Matt, had already made headlines for beating a murder case in Vallejo during his early 20s, and whose mother, Marty, would go on to become a part of one of the biggest racketeering cases in United States history. Others in their large circle included names like Blair Guthrie, the so-called Julia Child of meth in Contra Costa County, Joanne Guthrie, who'd come to be known as the secretary for the Aryan Brotherhood godfather Barry the Baron Mills, and Wendell Blue Norris, a storied AB member linked to several daring murder plots, escapes, and a failed takeover of the gang, and Raymond Ray Ray Folks, a longtime Hell's Angel president, widely believed to have kicked off the infamous River Run biker gang riots of 2002. And that's just a small sampling of the community these three young men and their friends grew up in. There were two older brothers in this circle as well, Timothy Covey and his younger brother, Thomas, who went by Bubba, and would come to live at the Donahue household on Garrettson Avenue for long periods of time. Bubba, the Donahue brothers, and Kobe are widely credited with forming the family-affiliated Irish Mafia, or FAME, with Kobe having made connections with the Aryan Brotherhood inside San Quentin, the Donahue brothers forming a reputation for themselves on the streets, and Bubba more or less a hanger-on whose loyalty to the group was never questioned. Timothy Covey more or less stayed away from the others, until one day when he had to do a jail stint and requested a FAME tattoo to make things easier for himself. Others from the West Contra Costa area quickly gravitated to this new FAME thing that was coming together, including another kid from around the way named Joseph Verducci, who called himself Ruthless or Joe Rue. To the outside world, FAME was a drug trafficking ring formed by young men who had grown up around experienced drug traffickers and knew that world like the back of their hand. Bubba sported a tattoo that said, "Fame till I die," blissfully unaware that one day he'd stare down the barrel of a gun held by another FAME member. To the criminal world in the 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s, Contra Costa County in California grew from a burgeoning to a flourishing meth market. Initially cornered by homegrown suppliers like Blair Guthrie or Donnie Phillips, then taken over by Mexican cartels when the DEA during the Clinton administration leaned on pharmaceutical companies to stop the wholesale supply of precursor chemicals. This arguably necessary move had an unwitting negative effect of opening a huge international supply chain, as the same type of restrictions on precursors didn't exist in Mexico, and cartels south of the border had already become experts in smuggling drugs during the Pablo Escobar era. As the United States rolled out anti-crack publicity campaigns,
This is your brain on drugs.
the drug of choice for the back alleys of America slowly shifted to methamphetamine, causing addiction rates to spike nationwide. This was especially true of densely populated regions like the San Francisco Bay Area, where wholesale meth suppliers could easily make a killing simply by selling to a few select middlemen drug dealers who would take on most of the risk and in turn be too scared or too proud to snitch on their suppliers when they got caught. It was against this backdrop that the family-affiliated Irish Mafia went from a small group of teens to a local gang that was widely believed to be at the top of the food chain. Its leaders were professional drug dealers, and as Kobe and Matty Boy began catching felony cases and ending up in prison, they would then expand the gang and make inroads with more ruthless prison gangs such as the Aryan Brotherhood. It certainly didn't hurt that Matty Boy's mother and father were personal friends of Barry Mills, the man widely considered to be the godfather of the Aryan Brotherhood, who was still able to control the gang from his maximum security federal prison cell. While Kobe Phillips and Matty Boy were in and out of prison, Jason Donahue and Bubba were largely able to avoid serious legal repercussions. Kobe, by contrast, caught a stabbing case as a young man, expressed excitement at the idea of a life sentence, admitted to stabbing a man he believed was a child molester during his trial, and still won an acquittal. Inside San Quentin, he was validated as an AB member based on his association with Curtis Price, a gang hitman who had killed 2 people in Humboldt and Southern California. As the 90s rolled on, Kobe's life consisted of year-long stints in prison, followed by shorter periods of freedom. One time, an institutional gang investigations prison squad followed him from San Quentin to his grandparents' house in San Pablo, watched him drive to Rodeo, and arrested him as he walked across the street with an alleged FAME member, and took him back to prison on a parole violation, all in the same day. But the 2000s were a different story. Kobe had fallen in love and settled down with a childhood friend named Stacy, adopting her 2 kids and having a son of their own, named after the 3 other founders of FAME. They moved to the nearby suburbs of Solano County, ending up in a stucco home next to dentists and insurance salesmen. There was just one hang-up, which was that Kobe was now a major meth dealer, entirely funding his lifestyle on drug trade. And the landlord of his home was a cartel-connected cocaine and meth smuggler named Sergio Vega Robles, who owned properties all over Northern California and used a clothing shop as a front for his budding drug empire. Sergio was full of secrets. He was a member of a Sureño gang called RST, but had familial connections to the Sinaloa cartel that led to the creation of a Mexican drug pipeline that ended in a small town called Benicia. In addition to FAME, Sergio was supplying black gangs in Richmond, including a local cocaine kingpin known as Peanut. But perhaps Sergio's biggest secret was that he was also attempting to stave off possible problems from the DEA and local police by signing up as an informant, turning in other dealers who competed with Sergio for customers, and hoping that trained, experienced drug cops would never catch on to his two-faced scheme. Sergio's brother, Jose Carlos Vega Robles, had a more streamlined approach: simply shoot or kill anyone who got in his way. Bubba had his own drug customers as well. By the early 2000s, they were all moving pounds as fast as they could acquire them, raking in cash, racking up spending, and closing in on the ultimate goal of becoming drug-dealing millionaires. Oftentimes, they would simply pay the meth importers from Mexico in guns instead of money, telling the local tweakers to go out and burglarize guns in exchange for slivers of crank. Then, it all came crashing down. Matty Boy got busted shipping around 300 pounds of cocaine on a drive to Chicago. And after a traffic stop in Utah, he ended up getting a 10-year prison term in federal prison. Kobe's troubles were somehow even worse. Since late 2004, the Contra Costa sheriff had considered him a major suspect in the killing of a childhood friend, an Aryan Brotherhood drug dealer named Daryl Grockett. And though the police couldn't prove the murder, they had violated Kobe's parole for associating with Daryl on the night he was killed. Adding insult to injury, the exact date of Kobe's arrest was in November, on his 2-year wedding anniversary with Stacy. Trapped in a prison cell, Kobe seemed closer than ever to getting the life sentence he'd wanted as a young man. Except now he had a wife and kids who had been relying on him as their criminal breadwinner. With no other options, he reached out to his childhood friend, Bubba's older brother, Timmy Covey, to stay with his family, keep the drug business going with Jose and Sergio, and if need be, protect them from whatever fallout might come from people believing he'd whacked an AB member. It wasn't long before Timmy and Stacy began pursuing an extramarital affair, which by then was the least of Kobe's worries, as he was certain to be charged with murder any day. But it didn't happen. Kobe was released in 2005 and continued to sell drugs with Sergio while attempting to keep his fractured family together and pursuing his own affairs on the side. The result was some kind of Sopranos-esque inter-family drama, only worsened when Bubba began dating Stacy's younger sister, who by then was still a teenager. Despite it all, Kobe and Stacy's marriage weathered the storm, and they left their suburban home together November 30th, 2005, to celebrate their third wedding anniversary. They made it a couple blocks when the DEA closed in, cuffing the happy couple, dragging them back to their home, before searching it with a warrant and carting Kobe off to jail. For you see, Sergio's double life had just closed in around him. The DEA agent he'd been snitching to, Gina Giacchetti, had caught wind of his second job as a major drug dealer, in part because he'd showed up to a meeting in a luxury car and admitted to owning about $1 million in real estate. And Gina was upset. She'd initiated a wiretap, which had caught a desperate Sergio arranging cocaine sales while attempting to collect debts from middlemen all over the Bay Area, as he'd perhaps foolishly fronted drugs to Kobe and others while failing to pay off a rather sizable debt to the cartel. Now, thanks to Sergio's wiretapped phone calls, his couriers led the DEA to a drug house in Southern California, and he was now legally responsible for about 100 kilos of cocaine. Kobe had been roped into the case simply for having a couple phone conversations about buying and selling drugs. But it was enough to catch a federal charge and ruin yet another anniversary. The DEA called all of this Operation Durex, and it did indeed catch a ton of white. The following year, Kobe was granted a release from jail, moving into a tiny apartment in Vallejo, and worked to scrape out a living with his main drug supplier still in federal custody, and friendships falling apart around him. After learning of Sergio's status as a DEA informant, Kobe had circulated court records, resulting in Sergio being beat up in federal holding. The federal case against Kobe didn't amount to much, but there were other problems. Kobe and Bubba's friendship disintegrated quickly, with serious consequences for fame. There were disputes about money, and it probably didn't help that Bubba's brother had carried on an affair with Kobe's wife, or that Bubba had been with Stacy's underage sister with allegations of domestic violence to boot. Kobe liked to bully Bubba and embarrass him in front of other Fame members, one of whom would later describe in an awkward encounter where Kobe called Bubba and put him on speakerphone in front of others and berated him with fat jokes and other demeaning insults. During one heated conversation between them, Bubba allegedly said he'd take Kobe's son, who was a toddler, and smash his head into the wall. That upped the ante considerably. One day Bubba got himself a gun, took a hit or two of crank, and got in his car along Highway 4, intent on settling the score. He would later explain that he took the drugs to get courage to commit a shooting. But Bubba's driving skills may have been affected by the drugs, or maybe it was the fact that he was driving a stolen GMC. At any rate, the cops attempted to pull him over in Martinez, California, and he hit the gas. He got as far as his hometown, Rodeo, within walking distance of the Garrettson household, when he crashed near Lefty Gomez Park and made a break for it on foot. A sheriff's deputy briefly turned the baseball diamond into a football field with a sliding tackle. Bubba was booked on felony gun and evasion charges. On the way in, he mentioned that he had led the police on a high-speed pursuit in Vallejo just a couple days earlier. Bubba was released but missed a court appearance in the Vallejo high-speed chase, generating a $30,000 warrant for his arrest. Meanwhile, Kobe's legal troubles began piling up. He was arrested on New Year's Day in 2007 for an alleged domestic violence incident where everyone involved was seriously drunk. The feds used the arrest to keep him jailed indefinitely. Concerned Bubba would make good on his threat, Kobe told Joseph Verducci and others to keep an eye on them while he was away, not sure how long it would be. So all of this brings us to my office bar on the night of January 14th, 2007, where Bubba and another Fame member named Kyle stopped for a couple beers. Bubba occasionally stepped outside for a cigarette, and during one of these trips, he saw Stacy's Impala drive by. It sparked an idea. He called her, asking to talk to her sister. She responded aggressively, asking why he'd been calling, as if he hadn't threatened her son days earlier. She hung up. He called back. Again, with the same result. Finally, she picked up and gave him some choice words. Joe Rue's been off the hook lately. He ain't fighting. Bubba could have left right then and there, but he stayed put. Stacy's phone rang again, but this time it was her husband calling from jail. The two had a tense conversation. Kobe had a suggestion. Tell Joe Rue to go over to Bubba's home in Rodeo and, quote, handle that. They exchanged some pleasantries and hung up, and the Solano County Sheriff was recording their every word. Back at my office bar, Bubba stepped outside again, this time to urinate next to the bar. When he turned back around, there were Joseph Verducci and Jose Vega Robles, one with a gun, the other with a knife. A witness heard someone scream, "Motherfucker," just before the shooting started. Bubba made a mad dash for the door, running alongside the front end of the bar as shots rang out, barely staying one step ahead of each bullet. He barreled through, jumped over the bar, and grabbed a fire extinguisher, while Kyle armed himself with an empty whiskey bottle. As Bubba was doing so, a man to his immediate left was struck in the head. Bubba saw this innocent bystander fall to the ground, dead for a bullet that had been meant for him. It was Jose Corona, a man who'd exchanged a joke with Bubba earlier in the evening.
Tommy, what you say about some things that your friends tried to kill you or some shit?
What are you talking about?
Some shit about the bar envelope.
They did, Dad. They tried to take my fucking head, Dad. The same people Jimmy was hanging around with, the same bitch that Jimmy fucking dates right now. She's trying to help me kill Bob. They blew somebody's brains out right in front of me, Dad. Have to fit down, there's all kinds of shit.
Well, you gotta watch your ass, son.
Yeah, I know. When your own fucking brother sleeping with the enemy, what the fuck?
But for the time being, Joe and Jose Vega Robles knew none of this. They returned to their car, where Stacy's little brother and a lady friend of Joe's were waiting, heading off to the home of Kobe's mistress in the nearby Vallejo neighborhood of Glen Cove. When they got there, Joe was ecstatic. "I got him." Jose Carlos began dismantling the gun, much to Joe's disgust. He pleaded with Jose to stop, saying it was, quote, his lucky gun. Indeed, Joe appeared to like the pistol. He had shot a woman in nearby Pinole with it. Bubba sure recognized his would-be killer, but when the cops came, he refused to talk. They ran his name, booked him for the $30,000 warrant, and interviewed witnesses who hadn't seen much. Bubba was determined not to snitch. He'd already fallen out with Matty Boy over a dispute about an insurance payment that Timmy allegedly stole. His friendship with Kobe was completely dissolved. All he had left of his childhood was that tattoo on his arm, "Fame Till I Die," and he was determined to keep it. It would take several months for the police to tie the Pinole shooting to the Vallejo shooting. But once they did, it was over for Joe. During that time, Kobe had been indicted for murder too, but for killing his childhood friend, Daryl, off of a lonely road in the hills of the sleepy town of Crockett. He elected to become his own lawyer, giving himself full access to the names of witnesses against him, including a former Fame member named Shovelhead. Kobe's co-defendants included Jose Vega Robles, Sergio Vega Robles, as well as two alleged meth dealers from California's wine country, And, of course, his old pal, Bubba, who was charged under the legal theory that by selling meth with killers like Kobe and Jose, Bubba would have to have known that the murder was inevitable. But before Bubba had been indicted, he'd had a little chat with his father. His dad called to confront Bubba about being arrested with his dad's stolen guns. But what Bubba didn't know was that his old dear pops had agreed to let the cops record the call.
Tommy.
Who's there?
It's your daddy.
What's up, Dad?
What's up with you, boy?
What's up?
I got a question for you, son.
What's that?
Did you come in here and take my guns?
No.
Who did?
I don't know, Dad.
Come on, man.
I don't, Dad.
Then how did you get busted with the one?
Cause I bought a few of them, Pop.
Where'd you buy them from?
Here, man.
So the niggas robbed me.
Yeah, I guess.
You guess?
That's what I'm saying. Some niggas come on my house. They had a bag full of guns, Dad.
And you just happened to buy mine?
Yeah.
And why did you need these guns? You got people looking for you or what, man?
Fuck yeah, Dad.
But they also paid Kobe a visit, ostensibly to inform Kobe's legal defense team, aka himself, about pending charges. But then they brought up the Vallejo case too. While admittedly, Kobe had never told anyone to go shoot up a crowded bar in Vallejo where he didn't even know Bubba was at, police told him that they believed he'd called the dogs on Bubba that had resulted in the shooting. Kobe laughed at the investigators and brushed the whole thing off, even asking detectives to charge him with a death penalty crime. But his mood changed when they'd implied that they'd be charging the mother of his kids with a murder conspiracy too.
You don't want her involved with that. She's not involved. She don't need to be involved. You know what I mean? If we want to fuck with me and deal with we're not gonna fuck with, I mean, so they are going for the special circumstances, making me eligible for the death penalty. I don't believe so, no.
But that's not how things shook out. One by one, nearly everyone flipped. Prosecution witnesses at Kobe's trial included Timmy, Stacy, Sergio Vega Robles, and a couple other dropout members of fame, like Shovelhead. Bubba was one of the final holdouts, refusing to answer questions in a helpful way. But when Bubba caught wind that he'd be stabbed if he ever got to prison, he flipped too. Jose Vega Robles and Kobe were convicted in separate trials of murdering Daryl Grockett together. Joe was convicted of killing Jose Corona on a controversial fourth trial and lashed out in court upon hearing the news. Bubba would later say he took the whole thing as a sign he needed to make some serious life changes, and that the near-death experience and being charged with murder helped him find a bigger purpose. Sergio, by contrast, became an agent of chaos, claiming he'd been bribing a high-ranking Richmond police sergeant who worked with the DEA agent Gina Giacchetti. Included in this was the revelation that Jose Vega Robles had shot and injured a confidential informant in a failed assassination, after learning from Sergio that the man was working for the Richmond Police Department. As for Matty Boy, being in federal prison probably saved him from catching a conspiracy charge under the same legal theory that they used to charge Bubba. Instead, he served his sentence and got out in the mid-2010s, starting a rap career. Ironically, his breakout song was entitled White Bricks, the very thing that got him sent to prison for a decade, while also allowing him to steer clear of the legal drama that engulfed the others. He has commented on social media that he has accomplished more in a few years after prison than the decades he spent selling drugs. In his music, he occasionally expresses disappointment in Bubba and regret for how all that went down.
Cops say he's stupid, they know who's weak. They put the press down on Bubba because they knew he was speed. That was my...
Kobe came to the same realization, but in a more tragic way. He's now incarcerated in San Quentin prison, serving a life term and organizing a fentanyl awareness event in light of an epiphany that he described thusly. I have always thought of drug dealing as a victimless crime. Looking back, I guess that's what I wanted to believe. I victimized my community by importing meth from Mexico. I victimized the Mexican community by sending large shipments of guns to Mexico. I think everything in life goes full circle. The drug circle came complete on May 10th, 2024, when my wife brought me the most devastating news imaginable. My oldest son, James, had died of a fentanyl overdose. Did my son die from my transgressions? Was this karma? Or was this a nightmare? And will I ever wake up?
Checkers and Rally's MVP meal deal makes you a big deal. A mushroom Swiss with fries, drink, and dessert, just $5. What a play!
This is the MVP of meal deals.
Score your big deal only at Checkers and Rally's. This eats different.
With Codex, I was able to build this in maybe 3 or 4 hours, entirely by myself. Hi, I'm Ryan Nystrom. I run AI product engineering in Notion, and this is what Codex unlocks. I've been building this feature on Notion called the Notion AI voice input. It lets people talk instead of type. And with Codex, I was able to point it to one of our existing features in our mobile apps, and in about one shot was able to build the entire feature and bring it over to our web and desktop clients. Codex's superpower is like branching out and like figuring out the context before getting to work. I manage a team of people, and like traditionally managers have not had time to like write code. And the fact that I can build this feature like solo while still supporting my team is like, I mean, it's crazy.
Everybody knows about Audie Murphy, but nobody knows about this guy who arguably has more military decorations than him. Today we're talking about Matt Urban, aka The Ghost. I know what you're thinking. How do you acquire the nickname The Ghost? I'll give you a hint. It's because he has 7 purple hearts. The man was legitimately unkillable. He was once read his last rites on the battlefield by a priest after the surgeon said that he was for sure going to die. He then proceeded to survive, get shipped off to England, recover in the hospital, where he then escaped from the hospital, made his way back across an ocean, and hitchhiked to the front lines of World War II to rejoin his men. And that is one of the 2 times that he escaped from the hospital to return to his men in frontline combat.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off.
In addition to his 7 purple hearts, he also has the Medal of Honor, the Legion of Merit, 2 silver stars, 3 bronze stars with V device, and the French Croix de Guerre. As an infantryman, he has a confirmed kill against an enemy fighter plane. He also has 2 confirmed kills on enemy tanks that he took out by himself on foot. He once participated in an amphibious landing, which to be fair doesn't really sound that impressive until I tell you that he didn't do it in a Higgins boat like everybody else. Him and his new buddy Al Shellbach made the amphibious landing by themselves inside of a fucking rowboat for reasons that we're going to get into right after a word from our sponsor.
Sweet me.
Showing off your chesty again?
My what?
Your Mustang armament chesty.
Oh, yeah. I got something so it's kind of quiet for kids' is nap time.
Yeah, where did you get a suppressor? You can't just buy those.
Don't worry about it.
What? No, I have to worry about it. It's like legalities and stuff, Hannah.
It's like that Lil Wayne quote.
Little Wayne quote. Real G's move in silence like lasagna? You're a housewife. All right, you guys know the deal. Delete Me, online subscription model. You give them money every month. They turn around and make sure that data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. What does this actually do in practice? It gets rid of your personal info, isn't just floating around the internet for anybody to be able to buy for a couple of bucks. Okay, I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing. I don't want to give Delete Me all my personal information either. I'm trying to get my personal information off the internet. Why would I give it to an internet company? You don't really have to give them your personal information. It's honestly kind of creepy. I gave them my name and my email address, and that was it. They came back to me a couple days later later and was like, is this your address or one of your previous addresses? It was. Is this your mom's full name? Uh-huh. Is that your dad's full name? Uh-huh. Are you related to this person? Did you go to this high school? They knew everything about me and knew exactly who I was just by me giving them my name and my email. All I had to do was answer a couple of yes or no questions as to whether or not that was in fact me, which it was, at which point they're like, cool, go ahead, pay for our subscription service. We'll go to all the data brokers where we found this information and force them to delete it. And as long as you keep being a paying member, they will continue to monitor all these data brokers for your personal information. And if these data brokers do acquire it again, they will force them to delete it again. In my opinion, it's definitely worth it. I've been using them since before they were paying me to talk about them, and I'm going to keep using them after they quit paying me to talk about them. If you want to give it a try, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. Okay, here's the deal. This dude has a ton of war stories. We are just going to speed run the early life portion of this video. Our story begins on August 25th, 1919, when Matt Urban is born in Buffalo, New York. He is the youngest brother, and all of his brothers are track stars. One of his older brothers actually goes on to be an Olympic qualifier that competes against Jesse Owens. Other than being track stars, pretty normal childhood. Dad's a plumber, mom's a stay-at-home mom, grew up in the 1920s, 1930s. They all have the same childhood. We've heard this story 15 times. We're not going to rehash it. Fast forward, Matt Urban goes to Cornell University. He's running on the cross-country team, and he's working 5 part-time jobs to pay for tuition. Apparently, he wasn't busy enough, so he decides to go out for the boxing team as well, and due to his outstanding endurance from being a track star, and as well as just being a natural athlete, he excels at boxing. He's able to box equally as good, conventional and southpaw, and he rapidly becomes known as the one-man boxing team because he competes for Cornell at 165 pounds, 175 pounds, and heavyweight. He's so good that to get him to compete at heavyweight, they had to stick lead weights inside of his trunks so that he would make weight. Despite that, he becomes a champion in all 3 weight classes. His junior year of college, it becomes pretty obvious that America at some point is going to be entering World War II, and he's going to get drafted, so he figures, hell, I'm just going to go ahead and join the ROTC program right now and start training, so that's exactly what he does. He then goes on to graduate college in 1941, immediately gets commissioned as an officer in the United States Army, becoming an infantry officer in the 9th Infantry Division stationed at Fort Bragg. From here, pretty standard stuff. He's a platoon leader, training up his infantry guys, getting ready for the war that they know is coming, but Matt's a workaholic, so he also volunteers to be the regiment's morale officer, where he goes and starts a basketball team and a boxing team for the 9th Infantry Division. And from here, that's what he's doing for months. He's doing infantry training during the day, he's being a boxing coach at night, and this just keeps going on and on and on with no break in sight. And then finally, in December of 1941, he finally gets a weekend pass. So obviously, he goes out to the bar on December 7th, 1941. As soon as he gets in there, he gets halfway through his beer, sitting on a bar stool at the bar, and the radio cuts in with an urgent announcement. The bar gets quiet, the bartender turns up the radio, and that's when Matt hears that America has been attacked by Japan at Pearl Harbor, crippling our Pacific fleet, killing thousands of Americans. All weekend passes are revoked, and all troops are ordered back to their outfits. From here, obviously, training ramps up as they get ready to go off to war.
Welcome to the new generation of web creation, where your vision and technology works as one, so you can create the way you think. Wix.
Silver and gold coins. We are buying and selling at Garden City Jewelry and Coin on Ford Road in Garden City. Highest payouts when you're selling, lowest premiums when you're buying. Stop by and say hi. See you soon.
Fast forward almost a year of training later, it is October of 1942 when the 60th Infantry Division, including Matt Urban, get told, load up on the boat. And they're like, where are we going? And they're like, get your ass on the boat. So they load up on the USS Florence Nightingale and they set sail. Wherever they're going is apparently so secretive that they're not going to tell them until they get there. Now, on one hand, that's great for OPSEC, operational security. You don't want to be telling the whole world where you're going to be going and launching a major attack in World War II. But on the other hand, it's pretty demoralizing for a military, especially one that has a significant amount of people that were drafted and didn't volunteer to be there. The entire notion of get your ass on the boat, we're going to ship you off to war and we're not even going to tell you where, kind of a mentally draining type of a thing. Because of this, understandably, morale on the USS Florence Nightingale, pretty low. Everybody's kind of in a bad mood. There's this rift happening between the officers and the enlisted. The enlisted guys are coming to resent the officers because we're all going off to war together and you guys aren't telling us what we're actually doing. Fuck you guys. So Matt Urban steps up. He's the morale officer, right? It's his job to keep morale high. He's got to give these guys something to focus on besides the fact that we're going off to war in places unknown. So he heads off to the supply room, grabs some rope and some duct tape. He ends up marking off a 20-foot by 20-foot section right there on the deck of the USS Florence Nightingale and making a boxing ring. He then proceeds to walk away, goes up the stairs. He's standing on the deck in the control tower and just watches and waits. And sure enough, within 15 minutes, a crowd has amassed and people are having boxing matches right there on the deck of the Florence Nightingale. Everybody's laughing, they're gambling, they're having a good time. His plan worked great. This is a humongous boost to morale. Then things go a little bit sideways because the next natural progression happens. Everybody wants to know who's the best at boxing. So then it turns into, we're going to have boxing matches, and if you win, you stay inside the boxing ring. They're having 3-round matches. Guys are getting rotated in and out as they win or lose. And then eventually this one guy comes in, one big dude named Al Shellbach. Apparently he was a professional heavyweight boxer, and he proceeds to get in the ring and nobody's able to get him out. He's knocking out absolutely everybody. At which point it turns into everybody's going to pitch in money, and whoever can actually knock Al Shellbach out of the ring is going to get this huge pot of cash. People try. Nobody can do it. He knocks out absolutely everybody, and it gets to the point that he's run out of people volunteering to get in that ring to box him, at which point he starts yelling and boasting. He's pretty upset that he's on this ship, doesn't want to be going off to war, so he starts talking shit to the officers, yelling to the crowd that is amassed around him, saying he wants to fight an officer now. At which point Matt Urban is sitting up on this balcony like, ah, shit, this might have been a bad idea. At which point Al Shellbach looks up at the balcony, makes direct eye contact with Matt Urban, and then proceeds to say, and I quote, "Hey you, punk lieutenant, yeah, in the peanut gallery, I dare you. Show us how gutless you officers are." Yep, this is a mistake. Matt Urban has just backed himself into a corner because on one hand, this is the 1940s. Officers and enlisted are not supposed to be commingling or intermingling. He can't go down there as an officer and a gentleman and box an enlisted soldier because that would, be against their code of ethics and the standards and blah, 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 blah. But on the other hand, if he doesn't do it, just being a man, like, how are you going to lead these men into combat if you're not willing to go down there and show them that you also know how to fight? So he's got this predicament and he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go down there. He starts walking down from the balcony. As he's coming down the stairs, he's taking his top off shirtless, and the crowd is going fucking nuts because Al Shellbach is about to knock out a lieutenant. What they don't know is that Matt Urban is also a heavyweight boxing champion, so they go in there and have this 3-round fight, and they beat the shit out of each other the entire time, but nobody gets knocked out, and it gets ruled a draw. At which point, Al Shellbach gives him a big hug. They raise each other's hands, tells him he's not like all the other officers. He is now a hero among all of the enlisted men, and him and Al Shellbach just became homies forever.
Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yup.
So this actually turned out pretty all right. Turned out pretty awesome. And then reality kicks in because the commanding officer yells down from the balcony.
Yeah, man. I had to go handle some business. But as y'all see, man, y'all seen old girl, man, MARÍA, CHATA, Leon. Hey, she was doing time. They was deporting her. She was getting back. She was doing time. They was deporting her. She was getting back. Can't say nothing about that, bro. She was damn near more sturdier than some of these guys that we got today. She for sure was way more sturdier than some of these guys we got today, bro. No lie. No lie. But damn, y'all done sat through motherfucking two more things, man. Y'all done shoot MVP. I ain't gonna lie. She was way more sturdier than some of these dudes we got. She ain't tell not one time. She ain't tell not one time. Now look. I'm about to look up some shit. Hold on. I'm about to look up the raid. I'm about to look up the raid.
It happened in February 2008. Police responded to reports of a shooting and found 36-year-old Marcos Salas. He had been walking hand in hand.
You had a safe pilot? I can save when I road trip.
Oh yeah, we can't come back. Back against the wall, CL20's knocking ready. IGI stripping, validated, shoot ready. So the victim in this crime, his name is Marcos. And then
We murdered each other. I just remember swinging nonstop, you know? This is where I want to be buried. I did PCP with my older homeboy.
Tell us about the lead.
In LA, they are the
Avenues gang, the one that.
Hey, gang though.
Good. I know they had like a
Y'all making some chicken?
What's that? A body cam raid? I'm about to see the body cam raid, see if they got it on her still. Cause that shit show you a lot, bro, with the body cam raid. What it do, baby Grizz? What it do? What it do? How long you been in here, baby Grizz? How long you been in here?
Once a chill artist spot turned into the battleground for one of Northeast LA's darkest chapters. How did a close-knit neighborhood built on history and culture spiral into fear and bloodshed? From its root.
In February 2008, police responded to reports of a shooting near an elementary school. In February 2008, police responded to reports of a...
How did you eventually...
Hey.
The Avenues, also known as Avenues.
She was a beast.
I'm Ryan.
Y'all remember a couple of weeks.
I'm Ryan Rabel, I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. Thank you for coming. This week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, kidnapped and robbed at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas. 8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty, Lontrell Williams Sr., Rodney Wright Jr., also known as Big 30.
Hope that people will wait to pass judgment on Rodney and these other individuals until all the facts come out.
Using Cellbrite, we were able to recover all of it.
Y'all remember a couple of weeks. This lawyer sounded so confident. You want to support me?
Yeah, I gotta
go
do
to
a big
Nini Marie 370.
I gotta do a big update on that.
Rap News Street Politics, and we back again with the most dangerous gangs in Northeast LA. Now, a lot of people...
A notorious LA gang leader described...
Struck. This man did.
Yep.
One of the most ruthless. Welcome to the deep dive.
USA.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Rob.
Hey, who in this bitch rocking with me? I got that. My that he in there rocking with me. Who is that? Let me know. Talk some shit.
Highway to Hell. That's one
hand with his
trip.
The Avenues, also
Rap News Street Politics. Rap News Street Politics.
In the last 2 years, the combined efforts of our...
Help fuel your...
Oh, okay.
That's some older shit, though. But yeah, that's some older shit. I gotta do a whole update on that motherfucking food safety shit.
Curtains stayed drawn. On that street, silence was not.
You don't build something like this by being afraid. You build it by making sure everyone else is. You don't build.
If you want, baby.
Think your man's faithful?
Yeah, why?
Ever check if he's still on dating apps?
What? Is that even possible?
In front of an elementary school when shots rang out from a passing car. The bullets miraculously missed the little girl. Solace was hit 17 times.
They spotted him, went up, killed him in cold blood. Thankfully, didn't kill the girl, the 2-year-old girl.
Moments after Solace was gunned down, Los Angeles police spotted a carload of known members of the Avenue street gang.
They looked at me, I looked at them, and they drove right past me. I made a U-turn to get behind the vehicle and made a quick right turn on Drew Street.
Drew Street. Police say that's where the suspects stopped the car and got out, guns blazing.
Suspects opened fire with, we believe, 3 different weapons. One suspect was killed.
Hand in hand with his 2-year-old granddaughter in front of an elementary school when shots rang out from a passing car. The bullets miraculously missed the little girl. Solace was hit 17 times.
They spotted him, went up, killed him in cold blood. Thankfully, didn't kill the girl, the 2-year-old girl.
Moments after Solace was gunned down, Los Angeles police spotted a carload of known members of the Avenue street gang.
They looked at me, I looked at them, and they drove right past me. I made a U-turn to get behind the vehicle and made a quick right turn on Drew Street.
Drew Street. Police say that's where the suspects stopped the...
Let me see something. Damn, I need that whole video.
The #1 selling hip-hop artist of all time is a white guy from the middle of the country.
Fuck no, that nigga ain't from the middle of the country, nigga. Talking about Eminem from the middle of the country. Yeah, right. I gotta see that whole bitch.
Stop the car. Stop the...
episode. Yeah, man, ain't got it.
Stop the car and
This records conversations better than taking notes ever could. This is Pocket, an AI note taker that records conversations so you don't have to. I use it for meetings, phone calls, even doctor's visits. And it captures everything clearly up to 49 feet, even phone calls without even using the speaker. Once a conversation ends, Pocket automatically gives me a summary of what was said, action items on what I need to do next, and key takeaways that I can actually use. So instead of scrambling to take notes or worrying about forgetting important details, I can just be present in the moment and enjoy the conversation. It has 4 days of battery life, 64 gigabytes.
stopped the car and got out, guns blazing.
I ain't gonna lie. This might be the best Arizona that came out. I can't lie, bro. That might be the best Arizona that came out in a long time. And it was like a low key come out. You feel me? It was like a we gonna come out on a low key.
Stopped the car and got out.
No cap, that shit is the best. And I done put my people, I done put a lot of people up on that shit right there, boy. Talking about shit so good.
June 25, 2008. In the early morning hours, a multi-agency task force of 500 local and federal law enforcement officers conducted a raid in the Los Angeles. A Latino street gang had terrorized the small section for many years.
Used to get jiggy. Back in the day, niggas used to get jiggy. I'm talking about jiggy. Like right now, bro, you cannot get jiggy like they used to get jiggy back in the day.
In the afternoon of the same day, LAPD Deputy Chief Sergio Diaz, U.S. Attorney Tom O'Brien, and Los Angeles City Council President Eric Garcetti explained the raid to a standing room only crowd of LaSalle Park citizens and the news media.
And it really wasn't no.
I believe this is actually the largest federal and local takedown
back in the day, it was cameras,
in the city of Los Angeles. 70 gang members. We did a Flush 13 takedown early this year that was involving the county. Also with HIDA, another federal and local task force. That was 102 gang members. But something that Eric said is exactly right. We're not done. I'm not turning my back on this community. I never will. And I'm certainly not turning my back on this particular part of the community. As you probably know by now, we were out at the Dodger Stadium before 4 o'clock this morning. We had 500 federal agents from a number of federal agencies, as well as a local law enforcement for LAPD, mostly also Glendale PD was there. And we had the federal grand jury had handed down several weeks ago the indictment to 120.
Just the raid. So when they went to go Raider, that's the pre-raid speech.
At least 6 locations were raided by ATF agents, including this home in Canton on Lee Court near Geddes and Beck Roads. Let's get to Sean Lay live tonight. Sean, we're getting a clearer picture of what this is all about.
Very busy morning, and we do know more tonight, Kimberly. Here's the deal. It's all about taking down street gangs, one in particular operating here on Detroit's east side, but with that tie to Canton.
I feel a lot more safer now.
Laura eBay says street gangs controlled this section of East 7 Mile near Mound so aggressively that she simply couldn't walk to the store.
That part of the store right there, they was hanging out up there. Just gangs, just crowds. Just hanging out, smoking, drinking, doing what they wanted to do.
The feds say the gang called itself Smoke Camp. This is a Facebook profile photo of one of its alleged members. His real name, Jeray Key. And Key was last living in Canton. That's where this morning the ATF raided a home on a quiet cul-de-sac. The U.S. attorney says Key allegedly sold guns to fellow gang members and then bragged about gang business on Facebook. The U.S. attorney says the Detroit Police Gang Intelligence Unit helped take down the gang, teaming up with the feds. But what about one of the gang's alleged members living out in the suburbs?
We follow the evidence wherever it takes us.
Neighbors in Canton were shocked to see the raid going down here on Lee Court. The suspected gang members were indicted today on federal charges of organized crime and massive drug and gun sales.
This gang was involved in a lot of violent activity, and the best way to get rid of it, you got to take out the key people.
I remember that.
Now, the ATF telling us tonight a dozen key alleged members of this gang arrested today in the raids and roundup. However, the ATF now looking for 2 other members right now, Daryl Key and Carlos Davis. The ATF says give them a call if you can help. Kimberly.
Sean, is there any indication that this gang activity was actually happening in Canton, in that neighborhood?
Apparently not. The ATF tonight saying that most of the gang activity was taking place in the northeast section of the city, but one of those members living out in Canton, and that's the activity we saw today when they went to arrest him.
Yeah, again, if anybody knows those 2 pictures that was shown.
And I remember just the whole smoke out.
Good morning and welcome to the KTLA 5 Morning News at 11 a.m. I'm Glenn Walker.
And I'm Lou Parker. Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news. Federal and local authorities have conducted a series of raids in San Pedro, targeting members and also associates of the Mexican mafia.
Multiple people have been taken into custody. KTLA 5's Lauren Lister live now in San Pedro, where officials are announcing the results of the operation. Lauren.
Yeah, Glenn and Lou, they are just wrapping up, giving those announcements inside the police department here. Now, what we are told are that 13 people were taken into custody as part of these arrest and search warrants served at 17 locations early this morning, involving multiple law enforcement agencies, hundreds of personnel, all targeting what they say is one of the most violent and dominant gangs here in the Harbor area known as Rancho.